What is going on? This is Intelligent Psycho here with another movie review, and this time it's out of the theater reaction for the movie Thunderbolts. This is the 36th installment in the latest MCU property, directed by Jack Schreier, and this is basically encapsulating of what's going on in the latest Marvel movie. So, insured on the Death Trap, an unconventional team of anti-heroes starring Yelena, Bucky, Red Guardian, Ghost, Taskmaster, and John Barker embark on a dangerous mission that forces them to confront their darkest, dangerous corners of their past. So we start with this movie going in to learn about everything that happened with the past reoccurring event of these characters, from Red Guardian, from Bucky, John Walker, from Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as he's trying to become that second version of Captain America. And we saw about Ghost, played by Hannah Joan Kamen. She was Ava Starr. She was in the Ant-Man and the Wasp, and she played there, and she was a creation in a laboratory created by Lawrence Fishburne character, played as Bill Foster. And then, of course, Taskmaster, just like Yelena Belova and Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. They were also in the film Black Widow, which she was the lone survivor, the lone wolf and the lone survivor in that movie. So going into this movie, they never really mentioned anything about what happened to the events of the old Avengers, why Sam Wilson's Anthony Mackie, why he wasn't and didn't have a integral part in the movie, or didn't have any involvement in this movie. This is his own standalone about anti-heroes basically confronting their mystery versions of their past. So this is not going to be the stereotypical review I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about my pros and cons and my overall thoughts, but I'm going to go in through and break down a little bit of the characters. So Yelena Belova, played by Florence Pugh, she is the main star in this movie. She was assigned on a mission by Valentina, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She was assigned on a mission to capture and to go steal over some files, some X-Files, that basically what happened about this secret project that she was working on. But on her bark on this long fall journey, she ends up running into, old contemporaries from latest movies, from latest installments. And what happens, she runs into what we saw a Ghost character, and we end up seeing John Walker, and then she ends up running to her old flame mate, Olga Kurylenko, who plays the character Taskmaster. So what happens around in the barking on this journey, we end up seeing that she ends up going back and forth in an ongoing battle with all of those friends, and then also all those old contemporaries, flame mates. And what happens is she ends up going out and killing, and ends up, well, we thought she was going to end up killing them back, going out and killing them all, but she didn't end up doing so, because they end up really rediscovering by towards the latter half of the movie that Valentina was basically sending them to kill themselves, to kill each other. But it turns out Valentina, who's working alongside with the government, was the main person that was kind of like on the other end, pretty much shady, had a shady, tactics, and gone through shady business practices. And the secret project that she was kind of working on, she recruited a bunch of these, group of like assailants who she was working on this project called Project Century, excuse me. And Project Century was basically a experiment, like a lab experiment, was testing on like different subjects and different components, with these, younger adolescents and everything. She was testing them out and basically having them to obey her commands and obey her orders and barking on her orders. But she couldn't do that with none of the characters that she assigned them on, because they all have a heart, they all have a compulsion, they all have a pulse, and they're also rebellious against the government. And also, we saw in the midst of the movie that Valentina was going through her own problems, her own issues with the government, and was also going through her own impeachment. she might have been gotten a chance to get impeached in the movie. And the reason why that was the case because the project, a century experiment that she had worked on in the beginning, completely failed. It completely bombed, and it killed over 20 people. That was she pretty much ended up having a test subject that she ended up having a test subject back in this laboratory. And one of the subjects that she tested and ended up surviving along the way was this character played by Lewis Pullman called Robert Reynolds. And Robert Reynolds, who is portrayed in the movie, he is the latest experiment that she ends up finding. Valentina ends up discovering, and she assigns Mel to go find and discover any whereabouts of what happened with Robert or AKA Bob in the movie, who ends up being the main villain in the movie. And we end up seeing how he was one of the test subjects that she was working on, and one of the people that she was working on as an experiment. And he ends up being the lone survivor in this secret, like stash and staged and everything. And so what we end up seeing him throughout the movie, he is imposed by like the darkness, darkness about around in this movie. He ends up opposed through so much that was compiled, whether it be through his own personal life because he didn't feel like he was so loved, in his life, whether it be because his parents was in arguments, or whether it be because he was just made out to be like a lot of the Thunderbolts characters that you see on screen here were made out to be more like losers, made to be more like secondary characters, backups, not to be taken seriously and not to be more taken aback. And also, we know about Bob is he has some more components, natural components and powers, where supernatural abilities, where he's able to crush glass, or where he's able to just make things kind of like make inanimate objects and make animate objects disappear, make inanimate objects, be floating up in the air, and has a powerful of levitation where he ends up flying, secret opponent of flying, whereas the rest of these Thunderbolt characters have no in parts of flying at all, whether through air, they don't have no gravitational pull whatsoever. Whereas Bob, where he was basically working on an experiment from Valentina, he basically has that power throughout the whole entire runtime of the movie. So, also another thing about this, and we also know Sebastian Stan, who plays the character of Bucky Barnes throughout all of the Captain America movies and throughout the Avengers movies, he ends up going on another path because he ends up being a politician. And he's trying to also take the seat of where Valentina is at. So he ends up getting half star to the votes to end up trying to take in the seating. But what happens is this project called Century that Valentina was working on was affecting his part of his local businesses that he had got going on. And then also what we saw with that is he ends up having to end up recruiting the rest of the Thunderbolts after all of them, Ghost, Taskmaster, Master, John Walker, and Yelena, end up turning on Valentina in the midst of the beginning and form their own team. And so we end up seeing that going on. While in the midst of them forming their own team, they end up taking taking the life of Taskmaster, which was by Ghost. And so that, which I'll get into the part where in my cons and my negatives. So I'm gonna start off with the negatives first, the cons, because mainly this movie is gonna be very positive. But my main issues with the movie is some of the comedy. To me, some of the lines, the dialogue was pretty bland, especially from David Harbour's character as the Red Guardian. Because I figured he was more like the Drax of the Thunderbolts team in this movie, because he basically was just spewing out line after line after line, and I was not a huge fan of the way they was portraying his character in the movie, because to me that's not how the Red Guardian was in the comic books. The Red Guardian in the comic books of this team of the Thunderbolts, because he does join them later on down the road, his character in the comics was way less joking and way less comedic and a lot more, assertive and a lot more aggressive and a lot more in action and way less dialogue. But I figured in the movie they try to go a little bit more lighthearted. That's why they made his character the way it was. It's not because David Harbour's performance was bad. It's just I didn't like the way how they was writing his character in the movie. I felt like they could have just made him a lot more serious tone, and I would have thought the movie could have been better suited instead of just having a little bit less comedy, but from him and a lot more seriousness coming from him. And then also, I did not like the way in the beginning of what they did to the character of Taskmaster played by Olga Kurylenko. I did not like the fact that they kind of just, and for spoilers for anybody who hadn't seen the movie, they kind of killed her in the beginning of the movie. I wasn't really the hugest fan of that. I wasn't really the hugest fan of the race gender swapping like they from the comics of what they did in the Black Widow movie for Taskmaster. But the fact that they kind of killed her in the beginning of the movie when apparently she was supposed to be a part of the faction of the team was just like, I was not a huge fan of what they did with her character in the beginning. I felt like they just kind of rushed things and rushed into moments. So also, another thing that was a negative to me, that was a con, and this is not really, it's more of like a nitpick. It's not really a big issue, but I think the movie really could have strayed away a little bit from the comedy because I don't think some of the lines landed from any and everybody. I felt like the comedy was just a little bit bland in certain moments, but I do think that was just that was just mainly, in my opinion, a small nitpick. Because mainly this is gonna be more positive because I did enjoy this movie. Now, getting back to part of the storyline. So, what we saw in the beginning, and getting back to Robert Reynolds' character, played by Lewis Pullman, his character as Bob, aka Sentry, was a project experiment, and Darkin was emboldened and enabled and enlightened. And the part where a lot of the fans was talking about mental health was evolving around him because his mental health, his mental state of mind, and overall his demeanor, his character was way more of a young adolescent kid that felt like he was more or less separated from his peers, separated from his family, and separated from everyone. Didn't feel like he was loved and didn't feel like he was there. And so he was controlled. The suit was made for him and he was controlled. And Valentina and Mel, her assistant, end up controlling Bob. And Bob ends up seeing and embarking and envisioning on things, mainly areas, in his mind. And it ends up being a virtual reality compartmentalizing set that he ended up seeing called the Void. The Void is like a dark black cloud, a black brigade, a whole big brigade, a whole big cloud of his visioning the darkest moments, the worst of his inner fears and inner demons that was pretty much coming out to light. And what happened was he make things kind of just disappear and never to reappear ever again. These are the things that he is envisioning in the void that he didn't believe what was going to be happening from that moment. And so in that sense, his character was kind of like, was a mixture between trying to be more dark, and he was emboldened by the dark, but then also of lifting more or less, trying to be more or less in the light. And so that was the main thing about his character and why I think it's very much important. And it also has an importance on Yelena because she ends up getting sucked into the void. She ends up getting sucked into where Bob was kind of going into his like just the whole compartmentalized of his mental psychosis. And also, she ends up seeing and envisioning about times that happened. Yelena ends up seeing and envisioning of things what happened to her in the past, what happened to her overall, her childhood, what happened to her, like, her younger sister, I believe. And also because of the fact that her sister, and her friend died, while she was a kid, and she never really got a chance to, like, see her lasting of them. But this is what happens when she ends up seeing and envisioning of this cloud, of this void. And when she ends up seeing these things, mainly the rest of the crew and the Thunderbolts kind of saved her and saved Bob from a major catastrophe that could have been much worse than they could have ever imagined. So, getting more so into Ghost character, because Ghost, her character is also vitally important because she has the ability to teleport through different frames and through different lenses. I feel like her character was mainly important due to the fact that she's one of the only few that can get out of this hole, get the rest of the team out of the predicament and the situation that they captured themselves in. And I like the performance by Hannah John Kamen because she basically is more free willing, free spiritual, and a lot more logical than more or less irrational, coming from the likes of John Walker as Red Guardian, you know, and David Harbour as Red Guardian, and even the Yelena at sometimes can be a little bit more not level headed as much. But I do think it also comes into a part where it plagues on it because of what went on, the traumatizations that happened in their past. But mainly, let's get to the positives with this movie because I have a lot of positives to say. First off, let me just say my biggest pros is Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, pretty much by majority of critics. I really enjoy the performance a lot, and Florence Pugh has always been a great actress to me. In this current modern day in Hollywood, I feel like she's one of the better actresses, and she definitely deserves to play Yelena Belova because I think her character is going to be very important, not only in this world of what's going on with the new Avengers team, but also I think she's going to play a vital role in Doomsday, and of course, is going to be played in Secret War. So she is going to be a absolute stud in this universe, in this world, and she was like that in the first Black Widow movie. I think she was very much important, and even Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff. I think she was very important in the Black Widow solo movie than even her. So that is a main positive I would say. And also, I really do like Sebastian Stan, and I've always liked his character as Winter Soldier, aka James Buchanan Barnes. I think his character was very, very important because he was pretty much the light and the heart and the armor and the knight in the shining armor and pretty much the overall glue to keeping this Thunderbolts team, in fractions. While a lot of these characters, as far as ideologies, feel so decimated. And to me, that's what it kept it more or less sane, more kept it more sane, it kept it more, importance. And I feel like that was just the gluten and the wherewithal for what was going on with the movie. So I really enjoy what he gave. He gave off something very, very important. And again, I did like the character Ghost, played by Hannah John Kamen. She was really, really something special. I think that they elevated her character and made her a lot more tolerable. And I even think they made Taskmaster's character a lot more tolerable in the movie too. Just didn't like the way how they executed her role as far as like the action sequences go towards the beginning half. But I think that her overall as a character and the action scenes that they had her in was really, really nice. Um, I also really enjoyed the character of Julia Louis Dreyfus, as Valentina. She pretty much is the Amanda Waller of what the MCU is currently because her importance is mainly trying to get the government off of her back because she, has all these things that are happening to her, questioning, how she is a CIA operative, how the government doesn't really trust her decision making and everything. I think she plays an important part of the role as well. Wyatt Russell, who plays the character John Walker, he also is trying to, like I said before, becoming the next Captain America, the next upcoming stardom of what Captain America could possibly be. But the only issue that I had with his character, which it mainly kind of was the issue I had in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, was his character is always kind of like just this busy, hotshot, know-it-all, kind of like an asshole mainly. He always tries to believe that he is bigger and better than everybody, in a sense. but it also comes with the it all comes with the price of admission, because we all saw, at least when I saw in the movie, what happened to him in his past, because embarked up his past where his family, mainly his wife and his kids, was separated from him, and that kind of really plagued into why he ended up be going like a rogue agent to become more of an anti-hero and became more disliked because of what happened in his past. So that was the main thing, that was a main key holder. So that was the main thing I would say is the biggest pro, is all of the character performances really gave me something special to really look at. Another thing that was a big pro in the movie, I really love the breakdown of the mental health aspect. And a lot of times you see in comic book movies, or even not even just in comic book movies, but in sci-fi or spy thriller movies, or just overall like horror, like they talk about mental health, even found footage and even slashers, horror films, and even in films that are like war, where they battle in war movies too. They battle when they talk about mental health. They don't go into the aspect of mental health as far as like they try to subvertively dismiss your expectations and or dismay your expectations, so prevalently and so lightly. They try to subvert the way of your opinions and your perspectives and prove it in perception of reality. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when a lot of films talk about mental health, they try to be overtly too preachy, and they try to be overtly preachy with mental health, and they try to go into so many things about it where it feels like it's dragging along and it's struggling along. Where in this film, they tackle mental health, and they tackle it how in a way where not only the casual audience can relate to it in a lot of ways, but they also tackle it in a way where it feels more authentic and it feels more genuine. Like damn, like mental health not only is important, it's somewhere important to deal with and talk about, but it's also in an important way because it could mentally affect it could also affect you in ways where your level of mindset, your level of thinking can also have irrational thinking and irrational moments and making irrational decision making. It don't always come in a way where it feels like an inauthenticity, where it feels such a way of just beholding and belittling yourself. So that being main thing that I love, that they grasp about mental health, where in a way it didn't feel so overtly preachy, like it was just throwing something at the wall, throwing something where it could stick. No, this feels like they really was trying to send a message to a lot of moviegoers, a lot of audience members, like, hey, this is something that you just can't ignore. You gotta face it up front. You gotta face your fears. You gotta face whatever's coming at you. Don't listen to all the doubters. Don't listen to all the people that question whether you deserve to be in the spot and deserve you to be in that way. So that was another positive that I would say was very vital and very key. Another thing about this movie I really loved is I really love the action scenes. I really love the action scenes between them and Century, the Project Century, played by Lewis Pullman. I really loved the fight sequences between them and him. I really thought that was really genuine. I really thought that was really the combative scenes and going back and forth. That was really special, man. It really showed me that. And also another thing about the MCU that was a big problem, a lot of times, especially nowadays in the last 5 years of the MCU, they always have problems with the fight scenes. They always have problems with, establishing a main core villain that, even though that he does bad things, his motivations and his motivations and intentions are good, and his motivations have good intentions, but you just know he does bad things for a reason, where you can understand why he does it, but you don't always have to agree with it. And that's been the main problem with the MCU, is they never really had a sustainable, capable villain that you could possibly see winning. And you didn't know a cast of anti-heroes or heroes was going to win. And that was been the main problem with the MCU over the years. I feel like from this and from the last couple of installments, whether it be the shows or the movies, from Deadpool, Wolverine, and, Daredevil, and out of this, I feel like they're going in a positive direction. I feel like they're going in the steps in the right direction to try to at least have some sort of tie-in and have not only the villain in this movie have a tie-in to what could be the case in the later installments for the Avengers, but also have what a tie-in is, and from a tie-in to the latest phases of Phase 5 and Phase 6. So I really do like the way that the fight sequences and all of the, Easter eggs and a few appearances throughout the movie, how it kind of played into something rather than be an outlier. So that's what I kind of really loved about that part about the movie. And also, what I love is also another positive that I really like is, the pacing, the runtime. I never felt like anything was slow, was dull, was boring, was flat. I felt like everything was just moving with a quick pace, and it was just you felt like you was there. You wasn't bored. You felt like you was there. You was involved. You felt like everything, all the emotions was coming in and repped out and railed out. You felt like you was just there and you was along for the ride. Didn't feel like you was wasting anything, wasting any opportunities. So later on in the movie, while all the characters were in the void, which is a virtual kind of thing that Bob was seeing in his mind, and as soon as he comes out of it, after all of them, coerced over Bob and hugged him and kind of just completely disown and just disparagingly remove everything about this black hole, this void, and remove everything out of him, and come back out of that whole thing, and they were basically downtown, the state of New York City, and down in Manhattan. They all come back, and they all see Valentina, where everybody was thinking that Valentina was going to get turned in, and that was never the case. That was not the case whatsoever. What happens is she basically does a press conference, and she does a whole big press conference out in the front, and we end up seeing her introducing us to the latest crew that was going to be called the new versions of what the Avengers were. So that is how we end up getting towards that part of half of the movie. Another thing that makes this movie special is how we end up seeing that everybody has their own arc, everybody has their own storyline, their plot line. It didn't feel like nothing was left out. It didn't feel like a lot of the times it didn't feel like anything was left out. It didn't feel like anything was empty. It felt like things were constantly moving and constantly going, and it felt like it was going to be building to something. So then we end up getting towards the end of the movie, and we get the two post-credit scenes. The first post-credit scene didn't really have as much importance. Basically, we end up seeing Red Guardian talking to like a fan or something, and he ends up showing her like a cereal box or whatever. And then that was the first one. But then the main one where all of the new Avengers team comes in, and we end up seeing a satellite dish coming in and out of space, and we end up seeing a ship that was coming in, down in, and falling, probably gonna fall down from Earth. And we also saw the logo, which that could also play a tie-in to the next up-and-coming Marvel film, which is called the Fantastic Four: First Steps. So for anybody who has not seen the movie, will not know what I'm talking about, but when you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. And wow, it's going to be a really good tie-in. So I would say, please, if you have not seen this, check this out, and check those two post-credit scenes out. Do stay till the end, because the second post-credit scene plays an important role. So overall, my thoughts about the movie. This movie was absolutely fire, man. I really enjoyed this one. I had a really good time with it, man. I definitely recommend everyone to check this one out. You'll definitely not be missing anything. You're definitely not wasting your time. You will go into it feeling some kind of way. You'll definitely go into it with the most amount of expectations And I can definitely guarantee you, you're going to be walking out of the theater coming up with all kinds of themes, all kinds of questions, Easter eggs. You're going to come up with all kinds of like just outtakes that really hit home, man. That really, really will hit home for you. And definitely, if you come out of this movie, you'll see a little bit of things when it comes and involves with mental health and how that plays an important role, in your life. So you'll definitely come out with that sense. So I would say check this one out, man. You definitely won't be disappointed. And my score and my rating for the film, I would say more or less it's a 3.5 out of 4 stars. Um, and I give this a solid 8 out of 10. I definitely recommend this one, man, for a lot of folks who are love comic movies who talk about that kind of discuss, the side of like mental health, who also love comic movies that really have really dope action set pieces, action sequences, anti-heroes, social outcasts, characters. Like if you love the X-Men movies, you'll definitely love this. If you love Deadpool, you'll definitely enjoy this one, because it has definitely embarks and beats and similarities, and as well as something that you'll definitely leave wanting for more and wanting more and asking questions, asking the right questions, asking for more questions, and wanting something more. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts about the movie Thunderbolts. Please tell me in the comment section whether you like or dislike the movie. Tell me why, and also tell me what your guys' favorite Marvel movie installment from the last 5 years, from like 2019 all the way up until now. And also tell me your favorite Disney Plus series, and also tell me your favorite movie also that tackles mental health. Tell me also all those things down in the comment section as well, to give me your thoughts and give me your input. And yeah, I am out of here, you guys. Peace and much love. And I will see you guys in the next movie, which that will come out in the upcoming weeks. Mainly, probably, maybe Mission Impossible, or probably Fantastic Four, Superman. I'm thinking about it, which one, either one. I don't know right now, but yeah, that will be the next one. So thank you guys for watching this. I am out. Please like, share, and subscribe to get the more latest content like this. Thank you.